There are some stories so shocking, not even Hollywood would dare to write them. This is one of those stories, the kind that makes an entire nation freeze in horror. It begins on a cold January night in Reno, Nevada. A 19-year-old college student, home for winter break, is staying at a house full of friends. By morning, the couch where she slept is empty. Her phone, wallet, shoes, all her belongings are still there. The only things missing, Brianna herself and a small teddy bear. At first, her friends brush it off as a misunderstanding. After all, maybe she just moved to another room. But then they find a spot of blood on her pillow, a detail impossible to ignore. What begins as a night of celebration and laughter quickly transforms into every parent's nightmare. But the horror doesn't stop there. When police arrive, they realize Brianna's disappearance isn't an isolated incident. It's eerily similar to a string of violent attacks that have plagued the city for months. And soon, detectives uncover a disturbing signature. The attacker has a gruesome habit of taking something personal from each victim, a trophy. How could this happen in a city like Reno, the biggest little city in the world, famous for its casinos and Wild West spirit, but not for its violence? What could possibly connect the missing girl, a house full of friends, and a string of unsolved attacks? Tonight, we go back in time. We unravel a story of family, tragedy, and the desperate search for justice. As the investigation unfolds, we are forced to ask ourselves, if this can happen to Brianna, in the heart of a close-knit community, could it happen to anyone? Brianna's life and the place she called home. To truly understand what was lost that winter night, we need to know who Brianna Zunino Dennison was and the world she belonged to. Born on March 29, 1988, Brianna, known to friends and family as Bray, or by her mother's special nickname, Breezy, grew up in a household filled with warmth and support. Her parents, Jeff and Bridget, did everything they could to give their children, Bree and her younger brother Brighton, a happy, loving home. For a while, everything seemed almost perfect. But when Brianna was just 6 years old, tragedy shattered their peace. Her father, Jeff, overwhelmed by a federal investigation into his business, took his own life. Suddenly, Bridget was left alone with 2 young children, forced to pick up the pieces. She made a courageous decision to move her family back to Mendocino, California, where relatives could surround them with care and support. In this small coastal town, Brianna and her brother found strength in family bonds, forging a resilience that would define them for years to come. As Brianna entered high school, the family returned to Reno, Nevada. Reno, the biggest little city in the world, is a place of sharp contrasts, a city defined by neon lights and a wild, restless energy. Once famous as America's divorce capital, Reno is a city built on reinvention and survival. Against this backdrop, Brianna thrived, graduating high school in 2006, then heading to Santa Barbara City College, driven by a passion for travel and a desire to study child psychology. By 19, she had already seen more of the world than most, yet remained deeply rooted in her family and close circle of friends. But beneath the surface, as the winter of 2008 approached, something darker was stirring in Reno. The city's wild spirit, its sense of freedom, was about to be shaken to the core. Who could have imagined that in a place known for second chances, a young woman's life would be stolen in the night? The night before, a house full of friends. January 19, 2008. For Brianna, winter break meant a return to old comforts. The familiar streets of Reno, the chance to reconnect with childhood friends, and the rare feeling of everything falling back into place. Like so many college students, Bree wanted to make the most of her time at home. That night, she joined her friend Jessica for an annual tradition, SWAT 72, a raucous gathering of students, music, and winter sports at a ski resort near Lake Tahoe. They met up with Caitlin, another close friend, at what the girls affectionately called the Big Orange House, a student rental where doors were rarely locked, and laughter drifted through every room. The house, always buzzing with energy, felt safe. This was the kind of place where trust was a given, not a privilege. That evening, the group prepared for a long night, concerts, parties, and the simple joy of being together. For a while, nothing seemed out of place. After hours of dancing and fun, Brianna and Caitlin capped the night with milkshakes and cheese sticks at Mel's Diner, a classic late-night haunt. It was 4 a.m. when friends dropped them home, waiting in the car until they saw the girls safely inside. But there was one detail, small at the time, devastating in hindsight. The front door of the Big Orange House was always left unlocked, a gesture of convenience for late arrivals. No one thought twice. As the girls slipped inside, trying not to wake anyone, Brianna decided to sleep on the living room couch. She didn't want to disturb her friends and planned to call her boyfriend before bed. Caitlin handed her an extra blanket, a pillow, and a small teddy bear, a quiet gesture of comfort for a close friend. In the dark, Brianna texted her boyfriend, a minor argument unfolding over the phone, just ordinary teenage drama. By morning, everything would change. But in that moment, as headlights passed by and the house fell quiet, no one suspected that danger was already closer than anyone realized. Morning realization, a missing friend, and the first clues. The sun rose over Reno on January 20th, 2008, just like any other winter morning. Inside the Big Orange House, the mood was ordinary, until it wasn't. Caitlin and Jessica, still groggy from the night before, wandered into the kitchen, expecting to find Brianna asleep on the couch. But the living room was empty. Her phone, shoes, and purse were still there. Every sign pointed to Brianna having spent the night, but she was nowhere in sight. At first, no one panicked. Maybe Brianna had gotten cold and moved to another room upstairs. Maybe she was still asleep, tucked under someone else's covers. It wasn't until they noticed a small red stain on the pillow from the couch that worry began to creep in. They brushed it off. Maybe the dog had gotten sick, or Brianna had a nosebleed. But as the minutes ticked by and repeated knocks on locked bedroom doors went unanswered, their unease deepened. Caitlin's concern grew into dread. She began searching the house, calling out for her friend. Silence. When every logical explanation had been exhausted, Caitlin made the call every parent fears. She phoned Brianna's mother, Bridget, delivering the news that something was very wrong. Bridget's worry was instant and overwhelming. She promised to come right away. Moments later, panic turned to terror. Caitlin looked again at the pillow, realizing the stain wasn't just a spot, it was blood. Shaken, she called Bridget a second time, voice trembling, then dialed 911. Police arrived quickly. To the untrained eye, the house looked unremarkable, a typical student home, cluttered but cozy. Yet on the couch, detectives found more than a pillow out of place. The blanket that had covered Brianna now lay on the kitchen floor, trailing toward the back door. The teddy bear was gone. The pillow showed not one, but 3 bloodstains, and other signs: saliva, smeared mascara, even bite marks, hinted at a violent struggle. The theory that Brianna had simply left vanished, replaced by a chilling new suspicion: she had been taken. Outside, the world continued as normal. Inside, the lives of everyone in that house had changed forever. The investigation was only just beginning. The investigation begins. Forensics, suspects, and a city on edge. With the discovery of blood, bite marks, and missing items, any illusion of safety shattered. The house where laughter once echoed was now a crime scene. Detectives from the Washoe County Crime Lab moved methodically, documenting every inch, every trace. Photographs were taken inside and out. Swabs were collected from the door handles, especially the back, where the blanket seemed to point. A sample of the blood was rushed to the lab for urgent testing. Brianna Dennison was officially declared a missing person, her name now spoken in anxious whispers across Reno. Her friends were questioned one by one, recounting the last ordinary moments they'd shared. Surveillance footage from Mel's diner confirmed Brianna and Caitlin had eaten there just hours before she vanished. The young men who dropped them off at the Big Orange House were quickly ruled out. They hadn't entered the house and had solid alibis. Attention turned to Jessica, who had left earlier that night, getting a ride home from a stranger. The driver, identified through tireless police work, did something rare for a suspect. He contacted police first, offering his DNA and a detailed account. He was cleared almost immediately. Brianna's boyfriend, Cameron, was also ruled out. He'd been hundreds of miles away in Oregon, and evidence supported his story. But while the case seemed to hit a wall, there was a chilling development. Forensics revealed the blood on the pillow belonged to Brianna. Even more troubling, DNA recovered from the door handle didn't match anyone in the house, or their circle of friends. It was an unknown male. Police compared it to all available databases. No matches. Meanwhile, the community mobilized. Volunteers, classmates, and even strangers joined the search. A vigil at Brianna's old high school brought more than 300 people together. Ribbons in her favorite color, blue, standing as silent prayers for her return. Investigators pushed forward, following every tip, every possible lead. But as days passed and no new evidence surfaced, an uneasy question took hold. Was Reno facing a predator who had struck before and might strike again? At this point, no one could imagine just how far this case would reach, or the darkness that still lay ahead. A chilling pattern, DNA, survivor stories, and the case breaks open. As police dug deeper, something disturbing came to light. Brianna's disappearance was not an isolated event. It was the latest in a series of violent attacks that had shaken Reno's sense of safety in recent months. Within a 600-yard radius of Caitlin's house, 2 other young women had been attacked in late 2007. One was an exchange student, attacked in a campus parking lot. She survived but was left with nightmares she would never shake. She told detectives her attacker was a white man with thick, heavy fingers. He had choked her, covered her mouth, and when she woke, she was in a truck, somewhere far from campus. The man pulled her hoodie over her eyes, told her not to look, and then assaulted her before driving her home. The detail that haunted investigators? He took her underwear, a personal trophy. It was the same twisted pattern found in Brianna's case. Investigators moved quickly to compare DNA samples. When the results came back, there was a breakthrough. The DNA from the campus attack matched the DNA on the doorknob at Caitlin's house. It was the same man. When the police made this news public, yet another survivor came forward, describing a similar attack and providing a composite sketch. The case now had a face, a pattern, and a terrifying escalation. Despite these leads, the perpetrator remained anonymous. Police and the Dennison family pleaded for information, appealing to anyone who might recognize the attacker. Media coverage intensified. The case aired on America's Most Wanted. Community support surged, and funds were raised to process thousands of DNA samples in hope of finding a match. But as tips poured in, every avenue seemed to end in frustration. There was no match in the national database. The realization set in. Reno's predator was hiding in plain sight, someone whose name had never crossed police radar. As winter dragged on, hope and dread mingled in equal measure. Would the DNA match finally lead to justice? Or was this city's nightmare only beginning? The breakthrough, a secret unveiled, the suspect unmasked 10 months after Brianna's murder. With public hope fading and detectives frustrated by endless dead ends, a call came in that would change everything. An anonymous woman contacted police, torn between loyalty and conscience. She told them her friend had found several pairs of women's underwear in her boyfriend's truck. That detail struck investigators like a thunderbolt. It fit the killer's pattern, a twisted signature they'd kept secret from the public. The boyfriend was James Bila. On the surface, he was just another Reno local, a 28-year-old former Marine, a plumber by trade, living with his girlfriend and their young son. But beneath the ordinary exterior, detectives uncovered signs of chaos. James had a blue belt in martial arts, a short temper, and a history of drug use. He'd once been arrested for threatening someone with a knife, but that incident had been brushed off as a minor offense. When detectives approached James, they asked him to provide a DNA sample to clear his name. He refused. Instead, he insisted his girlfriend, Carlin, could vouch for his whereabouts. But when police interviewed her, Carlin admitted their relationship was falling apart, and she couldn't account for his movements the morning Brianna disappeared. Something inside Carlin shifted. She agreed to cooperate, offering a sample of James's DNA, taken discreetly from his belongings. Forensics did the rest. The result was conclusive. James Bila's DNA was a perfect match for the genetic evidence found at the scene of Brianna's abduction, on the doorknob, and on items left with her body. On November 25, 2008, as James dropped off his son at kindergarten, officers closed in. The arrest was quiet, methodical, no struggle, just the sudden, irreversible collapse of a double life. Reno's mystery had a name, a face, and a history more disturbing than anyone could have guessed. For Brianna's family, justice was suddenly within reach, but the pain and the questions were far from over. Judgment, aftermath, and the lessons left behind. As the city watched, the courtroom became the stage for the final act in a tragedy that had haunted Reno for over a year. The evidence was overwhelming. Prosecutors painted James Bila as a predator who escalated from sexual assault to murder. The testimony was harrowing. Survivors of his previous attacks described their ordeals in careful detail, their identities protected, their voices trembling but resolute. Forensic experts tied James's DNA to the crime scene, to Brianna's body, and to the objects used in her final moments. The defense tried to redirect the jury's attention, urging them to look past the horror and focus on what they called the cold light of reason. They highlighted James's troubled childhood, a home filled with violence and fear. But for the jury, there was no justification for what had happened to Brianna. The verdict was unanimous. On June 2, 2010, after only 2 hours of deliberation, James Bila was found guilty on all counts. The sentence, death, plus 4 consecutive life terms for his other crimes. Even as justice was served, the wounds left behind would never fully heal. Brianna's mother, Bridget, chose to leave Reno, searching for some measure of peace far from the memories that could never be erased. Her brother, Brighton, vowed to live life fully, carrying his sister's memory with him, refusing to let fear dictate his future. Yet the questions lingered. Could anything have been done differently? How could someone so violent hide for so long, living among neighbors, friends, even loved ones who suspected nothing? The community was left grappling with a harsh reality. Sometimes, tragedy strikes even those who do everything right. And for Brianna's family, another blow would follow. Exactly 10 years later, her cousin Caitlin would vanish under mysterious circumstances, an echo of the nightmare they'd thought was over. As the years pass, James Bila remains on death row, his fate undecided, while those he hurt must rebuild piece by piece. In the end, this case stands as a somber warning. Safety can never be taken for granted, and the evil we fear is sometimes closer than we think. The lessons are painful, the scars deep, but the hope for justice, for healing, endures. The story of Brianna Dennison is a haunting reminder that evil can lurk in the most ordinary places. Despite a loving family, strong friendships, and a close-knit community, tragedy struck in a way that stunned an entire nation. Through heartbreak and relentless investigation, justice was finally delivered. But for those left behind, the pain lingers, complicated by unanswered questions, and the sobering reality that sometimes, even the safest choices cannot protect us from fate. As we look back on this case, we're left to reflect on the power of community, the resilience of those who fight for justice, and the hope that no family will ever have to endure such a loss again. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share this channel for more true crime investigations that keep the memories of victims alive and remind us all to stay vigilant. Let us know in the comments. Do you think a troubled childhood can ever excuse horrific crimes? Or are we always responsible for our actions? Your voice matters. Join the conversation below.